Yeah, yeah, certainly does. You mentioned Julian Alvarez there. I mean, I just think he's such a phenomenal football player. It, how likely is it that he ends up at another Premier League team this summer, in your opinion? Chelsea seemingly the only club we've seen linked to him, but can you see that deal happening this summer?
Yeah, Chelsea haven't made a move yet, and Man City will fight to keep Alvarez. So we're not looking at a 50, 60 million pound deal. We're probably looking at in excess of 70 million. And that's a big outlay to get a player that, due to a mixture of his talents and his value and injuries as well, started the vast majority of Premier League games. I was surprised because I've always, if we go away from the transfer market with my fantasy team, I've always been reticent with Alvarez because historically I've not known whether he's just going to come on or whether he's going to start regularly. But I looked and I think he started 31 of 38 Premier League games last season, which tells you that he was very important, integral even. So what Alvarez is looking for is for Man City to say, that's going to happen again. And you're going to get regular starts, not just games and appearances, but starts. And if they can give him those guarantees, then he won't go anywhere. But it may be that they can't heading into this season if everybody is fit. And that's where Alvarez may start to think maybe there's another opportunity. There's been no approach yet to Manchester City from Chelsea. We know also that usually the position of Pep Guardiola, we saw it with Raheem Sterling and Cole Palmer, when the player says, I want to go, the club are very understanding. But this is a bit different, and there'll be much more of a fight and much more friction to keep Alvarez at Manchester City. So it's going to take a really big bid, the kind of number that the Premier League clubs that have been vaguely linked don't necessarily have just to drop, because that's the number they're looking to bring in 2 or 3 for, not just one. So I'm told there's more substance at this stage with PSG. They're the club that really like Alvarez, and because of Mbappe's departure, have got the kind of funds that might make it possible. So keep an eye on PSG. I think a move away from the Premier League is more likely than a move within the Premier League at this stage, just because the number that Manchester City would expect. I'm also told that Atletico Madrid really like Julian Alvarez, but have got absolutely no chance of doing the deal at that number. But they're on the lookout for another lead striker as well. Alvaro Morata had a wonderful season. There's some interest in him from Saudi Arabia and also from Serie A as well. And he would be open, I'm told, to returning back to Italy. So Atleti are kind of planning because they feel like perhaps they'll need another striker, but they're not going to be able to do a deal either at 70 plus million. So price is an obstacle, as is the fact that Manchester City want to keep Alvarez. And because they want to keep Alvarez, the price is only going to get higher because they're going to use their valuation, if anyone comes calling, as a way of trying to ward off suitors rather than give a more reasonable number to engage in negotiations. So I think Alvarez is going to be tough, but let's wait and see what Chelsea do. At the moment, like I say, they've not made any kind of approach yet to Manchester City. So although we can't rule it out because he's one of those names that's come up and has been discussed internally, PSG are the more realistic suitor at this point.
There we go. Viewers, give us your thoughts, give us your feelings in relation to that. And yes, it's certainly an interesting one. And the one thing I think that City fans have got to understand about this is City, I wouldn't call it maybe an official policy. It's probably not written down anywhere. But when a player decides they don't want to be there, they're pretty good at facilitating them to leave because they're a well-run club and they understand that as soon as somebody's head's turned, you sort of had this with Ferran Torres, you had it with Leroy Sané. You often don't get the same player out of them. So it's going to be an interesting one to watch. In terms of exits from Chelsea, Conor Gallagher, probably for the last 6 to 9 months, him leaving has been on the cards. What's your latest understanding of his potential exit and the clubs in the sort of the front runners for him?
Yeah, Gallagher's in no rush. He's obviously at the Euros now, so we have to respect the player in this who's been a model professional, and this isn't the first window where we hear Gallagher speculation. So it's one I would imagine we can put on the back burner a little bit, because I don't see Gallagher wanting to suddenly jettison off to a video call or something, or hold a meeting in Germany about his future in the middle of the Euros. And therefore, because Chelsea are confident that they've satisfied the PSR situation, it means that this 30th of June deadline is not as important. The money they're looking for is with a view to the following financial year. And that means that they don't have to find this so-called pure profit on Gallagher between now and the accounting deadline on the 30th of June. So all of that leads towards it being a slightly slower saga. And Gallagher would love to stay at Chelsea, by the way. It's just a case of whether his role becomes more diminished under Enzo Maresca in a 4-3-3. The logical conclusion will be that Caicedo is a midfield destroyer and that Enzo Fernandez is a kind of Toni Kroos type player, a defensive-minded midfielder, but essentially a playmaker who everything flows through. And then you've only got one more midfield spot. And there's Andre Santos, Casadei, who played under Enzo Maresca at Leicester. You've got Carney Chukwuemeka, who might be forced to almost play in that role in midfield because I don't think they'll want to use him in a wide capacity. And then in addition, you've got Romeo Lavia and Leslie Okwuchukwu. So at some point, something's got to give. The interesting thing about the 4-3-3 at Chelsea is that you've got Jackson in the middle or potentially Nkunku as a false nine. But if Jackson's in the middle, then how do you get in Cole Palmer and Christopher Nkunku unless one of them is in attacking midfield behind the striker and the other one is on the wide right? Because I would imagine that Mykhailo Mudryk, Raheem Sterling will be the wide left-sided player at the moment. And if Elise comes, then even more so. If you put Elise on one side, Mudryk on the other side, then you've got to pick between Jackson or Nkunku, and Palmer likely is going to be playing behind. So then where does Conor Gallagher play? And this is why Chelsea feel in the long run, as much as they value Conor Gallagher, it may make financial sense to sell him this window. But the player will have a say too. So the Villa talks, I'm told, were only very exploratory. And Villa are not in a position where they can sign Conor Gallagher financially because Chelsea want 50 plus million. So if Duran gets done, one deal, it won't be a swap deal, I'm told, but effectively it could be because you might do Duran and then you may wait because Gallagher doesn't want it done at the same time. And then because of Duran, you may get the funds to come back in. But I don't think they'll be linked as of now. I think if Duran moves, it will be quick and it will be a separate deal, but then Villa may have the funds to be able to move for Gallagher at a later point. But at this stage, they've not placed an offer and they can't meet Chelsea's valuation. Tottenham, on the other hand, are expected to bid at some point, and they valued 12 months ago Gallagher at 35 million. I don't think they'll go as high as 50, but they might go up to somewhere around the 40 million mark at a top end. So let's wait and see if that develops. But they're the club to watch for Gallagher at the moment. But he doesn't have a concrete offer at this stage. So his focus is on the Euros. He'd love to stay at Chelsea. He'd love to get a new deal if he could. But there's nothing advanced on that front either. And when people sort of say, well, it's not advanced because Gallagher's being greedy, that's not my understanding either. He's looking to become one of the top 10 earners at Chelsea because he has been a near automatic starter, the second best player behind only Cole Palmer, and for many games in the absence of Reece James, captain of the football club. So shock horror, a player playing regularly as one of 10 outfield players wants to be one of the best 10 paid players at the club. And that's not greedy, that's just common sense given his stature at the football club. And I can tell you pretty categorically that whatever Gallagher may want at Chelsea will be the same number that he's looking for elsewhere at a club like Villa, who have got a lower wage bill, or a club like Tottenham. This is not Gallagher asking for 200k, 250k. This is Gallagher simply saying he wants his wage to reflect his stature at the football club.
Which I think makes absolute perfect sense. It really, really does. Viewers, any questions?